Hey guys, it's back with Hollywood Hills. It's been a couple of episodes where we went back old school style to go into the studio, and now we're in a different style of studio, but now we're going to go back into our live on the Hollywood format. You'll have seen with some of the coverage that we've been doing the last couple of weeks that we actually went out, me and the boys from LiveX, and we covered the closing round or the final round of the EWXCs. So we now have some new players to talk about. Historically, we've been talking about all of the off-road pinners. Now we can talk about some of the rock hoppers. Our first rock hopper is the newly crowned Pro Elite 2020 champion of the EWXC series. Ryan Sequeira joins us. Welcome, Ryan, and thanks for finding time for us.
Matt, thanks for the awesome privilege to be on the show. It's really appreciated.
No worries, dude. No worries. Look, obviously the whole idea of the show is to introduce people to the history, where you guys came from. And in the weeks building up to the show, you and I were actually talking about some of the old stuff when you and your mom were phoning me trying to find out which bikes to buy and all this kind of stuff. So I guess it's cool to chat to you again. You know, it was great to see you out at the EWXCs 2 weekends ago, but since then, I guess it's straight back to school and everything for you, hey?
Yeah, unfortunately, I'm in matric this year, so we have to get down and focus on my final exams for the year. But it was really awesome to see you out at the EWXC again, out with us rock hoppers.
Yeah, dude. I mean, we'll get to it just now, but you know, it didn't start out rock hopping for you. In fact, I remember you at some of the GXCC races, but you know, this is the guy that we all know now, and it's amazing to think that you've actually landed your first #1 plate, and it's such a huge deal as well, because you know, maybe you get overshadowed by a couple of other guys, but you focused on the EWXC and the sprint races, and I think it's been a nice decision.
Yeah, it was an awesome decision. We had to set out a few series this year in order to be able to balance my school and riding. So it was really awesome to knock down the #1 plate this year. It was really tough, especially with the competition in the Pro Elite class being my first year. I didn't really know what to expect, and I never expected knocking down the #1 plate.
Yeah, dude. Well, we've got some cool footage that we'll end the show off with that you haven't seen yet, and we know the viewers at home haven't seen yet. But let's start at the beginning, as they say. So, you know, unfortunately, with my racing career, I only swung a leg when I was like 15 or 16. So I missed out on all those cool things that you kids learn when you jump onto BMXs and little pee-wee bikes. But man, you started real young, hey? So take us through that one.
Yeah, so I got my first bike around about at the age of 1. My parents bought it actually from a few of their friends. And we jumped onto it when I was about 1 year old. We put the training wheels from a bicycle actually onto the bike. And by the age of 2, I walked up to my dad and I told my dad, no, these things need to come off the bike. It's too easy to ride. And we actually jumped onto the bike, and about 5 minutes later, I rode through a pre-crossed wall. Luckily, my grandpa had actually driven into the wall before the tractor, so it was a bit weak, so I didn't get too injured, luckily.
Listen, I mean, often the case when a kid jumps onto a bike that early, was your dad a racer, or a racer wannabe, as they say, a guy that never got the chance to go racing?
No, my dad was actually a soccer player. He had a bike to get him around, so I don't really know where I get the genes from.
Well, thankfully he bought into the concept, because I could never make my dad buy a motorbike. I tried once in '91, but unfortunately the test ride didn't go as planned. I'll tell you about that one day. And then you know, you stuck with it as well, though, hey, because you jumped from the Pee-wee 50 up to, I think it was a KX65. So this is where like you really started to take off, hey?
Yeah, so I was a bit of a goon on that bike. Didn't really know how the two-stroke worked. Got stuck in mud a few times at the Val there, as seen in the picture. Yeah, the KX65 was an awesome bike. We actually kept it for a while. My brother actually rode it a bit. But yeah, that was an awesome bike, and it actually moved me up onto the 154-stroke that I started racing on.
I was going to say, these bikes, the Pee-wee and the KX, were essentially farm bikes. You never actually took them to the tracks. But the big switch to the Honda 150, and it's a real usable bike. I love those bikes. But that was like your first time going racing. Motocross, as many of you guys start that was the first thing. Hey, motocross.
Yeah, so we went out to a motocross event at Aurora here in Kempton, and I honestly surprised myself. I never expected to do as well as I did. I think I finished third in the championship that year on my CRF 150. But yeah, that was a really amazing bike, and it did wonders for me.
Now, the first time I ever probably pronounced your name wrong, but the first time I ever mentioned in commentary the name Ryan Sequeira, and it's a cool name, by the way. It's almost as cool as Adriano Catalano, but Sequeira is pretty close. I think it must have been at Farm Jam, maybe one of the early FJX events. That's where you rocked up on an old, I think it was an old KTM 125, and you were good, dude. You were very good. So where did those skills come from?
So through, well, actually staying where I stay, Steven Marinov actually stayed in my sort of Boomdorf area. And we slowly started hooking up rides and things, and he actually got me into the rocks. And I really thoroughly enjoyed it. And I actually remember one of our first rides with him, I pushed my bike maybe more than I rode it. And then, yeah, he invited me to one of the FJX events, and we went out and we did pretty well on the 125.
I remember Marinoff. He was like, I'm 6'1". I think he ended up being like 6'5". Real tall kid, wasn't he?
Yeah, no, he was massive.
You were little then, actually. You were a little dude. I remember you hadn't quite kind of like grown into your teenage years, so you were about the right size for a 125. But in the Super Tech, you were probably battling to get your feet down, weren't you?
Yeah, I couldn't get my feet onto the floor. It was quite a struggle, but that taught me how to ride on the pegs, so it all worked out.
Now, those were high school days, and that was the old high school rule of, in fact, you and I spoke about this offline. It was the old original high schools before it became 125s. So you were on our old 125s, but you were probably lined up against guys on the early 150s, because I think they'd just come out. A ton of guys were still on the 254 strokes, and maybe one or two guys on 200s. So it was that you were probably on the back foot there, because the 125 was probably the weakest bike on the line.
Yeah, it was a struggle to run up front with the guys, but we made the 125 work. Unfortunately, we had quite bad luck at the GXCCs, having a few mechanical failures. So I struggled to run the pace of the guys because the bike would give in, and I wasn't really training any fitness at that point, so I didn't really know those last few laps what it felt like until I got one right, and I was dead at the last lap.
That was the one race where you were hoping the bike would seize just for once.
Yeah.
Listen, there was obviously a moment in your career quite early on where you decided, let's go and get some proper training done. And I know you hooked up with Brian Capper, and I actually read his testimonial, and he said, I think there was one point where he was training you and he asked you, or asked your dad, how long have you been riding? He thought you'd been riding for about 6 or 7 years, and you'd only been racing for 2 years. So those are quite big words coming from Brian. But how did the training work with Brian?
So we went out to a Power Soul event at Carnival City, actually, and I ended up winning the high school class. And yeah, so I raced the Dash for Cash with Brian Capper, and we kind of hooked up from there. And I spoke to him quite a bit about a few training sessions. And yeah, we got the training going. He really helped me a lot. And he just got my pace up a bit. And then, yeah, it just went on from there.
Well, let's talk about the colors that you're wearing, because you've now been in these colors for, I think, 2 or 3 seasons. But really, it was the beginning of 2019 where things started to happen, where that big MCA whole shot Husqvarna squad came together. And I think you got onto what they called the B squad there, but it really helped out to kind of like deliver you to where you are today. So tell me about the whole shot deal and how that came about.
So I was training at my personal trainer, Margie Smith, and we went out to a function she had, and I got the offer, to my surprise, that I'll be riding for the MCA whole shot Husqvarna team. And it honestly reinstalled such confidence into my system, and it really made me feel a lot better at what. And then we jumped onto the Husqvarna 150. At that time, it was still a carb model, and I honestly got some really good results done. It was awesome. The EWXCs, the low faults, and the WFOs, and we actually started racing nationals that year.
Yeah.
And I got a podium, actually the first podium whole shots Husqvarna team for 2019, and it really go to the next level.
Because that was your final season of high school 125s, or high schools as they're called for the enduros. But then I suppose, you know, there was nowhere else to go after that. You had to jump up to Pro Elites. You kind of aged out, as they say. And then, you know, 2020 was you did carry that momentum forward because you came into 2020 strong. And I remember a lot of social media buzz about you coming into this year because you were running pretty much the same pace as Heinrich Aust, you know, and we know where he's gone, you know?
Yeah, Heinrich's actually a really good friend of mine, and we go out training really often. So it's really awesome to be riding with a guy that rides for a factory team. And it gives me hope because to be able to ride with a guy like that, it's really awesome. As you can see, there was my first national podium for the team on a 125 actually, because that's the year that it changed that we had to ride a 125. And yeah, there's Heinrich and Mr. 125 Ryan Pulser standing next to us, and it was really awesome to keep up with those guys.
Former Mr. 125. Yeah, I kind of tagged him with that. It stuck for a hell of a long time. And even when me and Ivan had put in the shows together, I still want to say 125. When you say Pulser, it's 125. They kind of like stick together. I'm going to have to work on that. And then, like we said, we've got a nice treat for you. This is pretty much all of your footage that we managed to find from the final round of the EWXCs. But obviously, you know, you'd done all the work in the championship coming into this final round. So how tense were you lining up on the pro gate for the final round, knowing that you basically had to get it done at that event?
I was really nervous going off that start line, especially with all those Natal boys there, knowing that the insane amount of training that they put into their riding. And I knew I just had to finish within 2 positions of Rob. So I rode with Rob for 2 or 3 laps, sticked on his tail, and yeah, I was just hoping for the best. Eventually, Armand Fourie passed me. To my surprise, Armand is riding really well at the moment. He's really putting in the work. And yeah, I managed to finish within 1 position of Rob, and we nailed down the championship.
That was a good strategy as well. But I mean, the beginning of this year, you were probably one of those guys that was really hard done by the lockdown because you were carrying such good form and momentum forward from 2019. You started 2020 super strong, and then the big handbrake got pulled up. So, you know, to reboot a racing program with, I don't know, probably 5 months out of the seat, that was difficult, eh?
Yeah, it was really tough because we don't really stay on a farm and there's not much riding right like close to us. So we were sneaking a ride in the Millie Fields now and again with Matthew Wilson and Zander Hoos, and we would sneak off, and there were a few close calls, but we got away with it. We also stayed in the gym, and it really helped me. It just kept my fitness above and beyond what it needed to be. So when I got back on the bike, I felt really good. I didn't have any struggles with cramps and things. Yeah, it was awesome to be able to watch your shows and things during lockdown, as it kept me motivated to carry on racing, actually.
Oh, thanks, man. We appreciate that. Tell me about the relationship with you and the Crazy Bunch then. Matty Wilson and Carl McKenzie and Dav Cocker. You guys seem to be like the crew out there.
Yeah, they're actually really good friends of mine. Maddie stays down the road, and Davin is actually staying at Carl McKenzie. So it's really easy to hook up a ride during the week. Just down the road from me, we've actually kind of made like a flat track. And that's awesome to be able to go out and ride with those boys that do the GXCCs and keep their pace up. It also keeps me on my toes because then I can get a bit of the flatland work in and keep my pace as well.
Well, that's what I was checking as well, because you you're very strong on the flatland sections, and it's one of those themes that we follow as well. Like you know, when you talk about, you know, and I can compare you to riders like Wade Young and Blake Goodside and Flanny and all those guys, because they came from that old junior tour where it was flatland racing, flat out, and then only when they were, you know, 15, 16, 17, they started going into a little bit of enduro. And we see that where the guys like yourself are good at the rocks, but also as good on the flatlands. So I think that's where the mixture comes in for you, especially you.
Yeah, it's awesome to be able to run the pace in the flatlands because it actually is quite a big advantage. People don't understand how much time you can make up in a corner and how much time you can actually lose on a rock. So yeah, the flatlands, I kind of make my time up. I use them. I don't really use them to rest. And in the rocks, I just keep a good pace and I try to keep it flowing without getting stuck. So yeah, it's awesome to just keep a balance in my riding and training so that I don't fall behind the pros.
Look, I know you're obviously studying for your matric exams, and that's a very cool thing to get out the way. But you're a racer, so what's the next plan for Ryan the racer? Because basically now the question mark is you really have to go full pro, which means probably next year racing like we see a lot of the kids. You're going to have to race low felts, EWXCs, national enduros, MPs, roof. Like, what's your focus point for next year?
So next year I'm actually taking a gap year. I was a bit late to apply to university, to my delight actually. Yeah, so I've had a few chats with my parents. I'm looking to move down to Hilton with Heinrich and Luke Walker next year, hopefully. And yeah, we can get the training going at least. Then I'll be on the bike a lot more than I am at the moment. I'm also looking, I don't really know at the moment what I want to do bike-wise. I think I'm going to move to 250, two-stroke. It's just an advantage in the rocks, say those bikes just lag away from the little 150. So yeah, I'm looking at doing that. And then next year I'm racing as much as I can, wherever I can.
Yeah, dude. Like, you know, it's been a great journey to watch, and obviously we're looking to see where the next step is going to be. So, is it full on rockhopper from now on till the end, or are you going to come back to the flatlands and pin a couple of GXCCs every now and again, or what?
If I can get onto a 254 stroke, I'd be more than willing to come to a GXCC and try race some flat stuff again. But I don't think I'll do it on two-stroke again after all my bad luck in the past years.
Dude, you've watched our shows. Have you seen that 250 gates? That's scary.
Yeah, it's a scary gate. I mean, with Davin Cocker, Brad Cox, all the top boys are in that gate.
Yeah, and all your Chinas as well. I actually heard through the grapevine that Carl McKenzie's kind of given up on 185s. He's too big. He keeps breaking them, and next year he's going straight to the 250s as well. So yeah, he's there as well.
Yeah, him and Maddie will be in that class next year, it sounds like.
Yeah, it's going to be busy. Well, listen, dude, you've seen how the shows end, so this is where I hand it across to you. Your chance to, I know a lot of the riders don't get an opportunity like this, so just a nice place for you to say thanks and high five anyone that's helped you along the way. So Ryan Sequeira, the mic is yours.
Thanks, man. I'm just going to read this. I don't really want to leave anybody out. So to Whole Shot Motorcycles, they keep our bikes running fresh all the time and have the best service. Michelin tires, they keep me tracking the whole time. I've never had a problem with traction at a race, even at the wet races in KZN. Armour Truck and Plant Tires, Underkursen, our team manager actually. Thank you for all the Hilton and the Lesotho trips. It's really taken my career to the next level. Decra is actually carbon fiber protection, and they actually keep my bike safe from all the hard knocks on those flipping gnarly rocks. Engine Motorsports. Carl gave me the foot in the door to the new race team, and it's really taken my career to the next level. Grant Smith from MCA. He was my first sponsored ride, and he installed so much confidence in me. Margie Smith, champions in training, our fitness coach. I don't think I would have ever finished the 3-day event without this lady. She keeps our muscles in awesome condition. We never get injured. Bradley Cox, after a training session with him a few years ago, he told my mom to get me into race. Brian Capper for the training sessions and guidance in my early days of racing. Brian, thank you so much. All the pro elite riders who I hooked up rides while I was still in the high school class and I'm actually racing against nowadays. My family for the awesome support and sacrifices they make for my racing, especially my dad for the hard hours in the pit crew and working on the bike late at night. And lastly, thanks to you, Matt. Thanks for this awesome opportunity. I really appreciate to be on this awesome show of yours.
Absolutely perfect, dude. You're a pro. Absolute every which way. You know, you've come through the ranks. It's been nice to see you get that ride, and it's cool to get that opportunity, like you say. And I hope you stay factoried up the whole way through, because it really helps. And yeah, well done on high fiving the mom and dad. And that's where it all begins. All right. Well, I'm going to say thank you for being our first Rockhopper guest. And once again, congrats on the big #1 plate. You're the champ, and everyone's going to be chasing you for next year. And best of luck for the matric exams as well. Thanks, Ryan.
Thanks, Matt.
All right. We'll chat to you a little bit later on, and we'll be watching to see the future of that kid. And it is a big future as well. So, you know, in his first year up into the Pro Elites, he beat some big bangers as well, straight out of high school. So he's definitely one to watch, and we will be keeping a close eye on him here at Hollywood Hills going forward into 2021. We're going to sign off with that and get ourselves ready for next week. Now, we know that the National Off-Roads got nailed down at the doubleheader at KZN, but we've kept that back as a main feature. So we're going to go back in the studio next week. We'll make that our feature. We'll talk about a couple of the other events that have been happening around the country, and then we'll get ourselves ready to go forward into the racing month of November. Of course, at the end of this month, we go into the next round of the GXCCs. That's going to be out at Racemeerbilt. And obviously me and the LiveX crew will be out there doing the full coverage for that. And then we'll also be building up to Farm Jam. Farm Jam, the entries are going to be opening this week, Wednesday, on Race Control. So get those entries in, and that event is going to be on the 14th of November. But for now, thanks to Ryan Sequeira, and we can't wait to bring you more news and footage on next week's show. Cheers.